Going to be spending the next week talking about decimals. Today's lesson is on adding and subtracting multi-digit decimals. We'll be adding and subtracting decimals to the thousands place. We're going to use models, and we're just going to use the standard algorithm of lining them up and doing the work. So we're going to start here. So we've got this 10 by 10 grid. So this entire thing here represents one whole piece. So there's 10 by 10, which makes 100 squares. So every one of these squares stands for 1/100th or 1/100th as a fraction. So 0.01, 0.01, here's 100th, 200th. So we count all of these up. We have 100 hundredths. 100 divided by 100 is one whole piece. So we're going to be working on finding the sum, which is the answer to an addition problem of 13 hundredths and 58 hundredths using this grid. So if I want to represent 13 hundredths, this is like 13 cents out of the whole dollar, I need to shade in 13 of these squares. So you're going to pick one of these colors here, and you are going to shade in 13 of these squares. I'm going to use this blue color. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 of my squares are shaded in. So this is what I have to start. If I want to represent 58 hundredths on the same grid, I will have to shade in 58 small squares. Now I'm going to use two different colors, and I'm going to show 13 hundredths and 58 hundredths to see how many I have total. So go ahead and see if you can use two different colors and solve that problem, and then come back when you are ready. So I'm going to start with my blue. So I know here is 10. Actually, let me make that a little thicker. So I know here is 10, 11, 12, 13 here. So now I need a different color. So I'm going to use pink here. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to say here's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and I need 8 more. 50, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 58. So now I can look at this model and see how many I have total. So here's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 71. So there are 71 total squares shaded in. But if I'm thinking about that as a decimal or a fraction, it's 71 out of 100. So 0.71, 71 hundredths is what we have here. So now we're going to take this and see if we can do it using our standard algorithm. So an algorithm is just a strategy that you can use. So before we do our task here, let's just think about it. So adding decimals is very similar to adding whole numbers. You have to write the numbers so that the places are lined up. Your ones are lined up, your tens are lined up. If I have decimals, my decimals should be lined up. My tenths should be lined up. My hundredths should be lined up. So while at the store, Robert bought 26 hundredths pounds of red grapes and 34 hundredths pounds of green grapes. How many total pounds of grapes did Robert buy? So now I know I'm adding these up. So I have 0.26 red, and I need to line my decimals up. 0.34 green. I'm adding these up. So then we start over here on the right, and we regroup just like adding whole numbers. So you can see my decimals are in the same place, lined up. My tenths, my hundredths, my ones, even though there aren't any, they're still lined up one on top of the other. So 6 plus 4 is 10, so I regroup with the 1 on top. 2 plus 3 is 5, plus 1 more is 6, and I bring my decimal straight down, and I have 0 ones. So I have 60 hundredths or 6 tenths. And I don't even need that 0 in the front either. I have 6 tenths. All of these are equivalent to each other. So let's go ahead and look at our task here. So first I want you to line up your decimals just like I did, and then regroup and solve the problem. So this is just explaining on B, how did you regroup everything? How much total did he buy? And then tell me how adding decimals are the same as whole numbers or different than whole numbers. Let's go ahead and pause the video and do task 2. Hey, number 3, task 3, asks us to find the difference. When we are finding the difference, we are finding the answer to a subtraction problem. So the difference of 42 hundredths and 19 hundredths using our grid. So if I have 42 hundredths, that means I need to shade in 42 out of 100 pieces. So let's start with that. I'm going to use a thicker marker color here. So I know here's 10, 20, 30, 40, 41, 42. I could shade going across. I can shade starting at the right. You just need to shade in 42 of the pieces. You could even pick 42 random pieces and shade them in. That'd make it harder to count. I like to do them in groups of 10 whenever I can, just to make it easier to count. So now we're going to choose the statement that best describes how to subtract 19 hundredths from 42 hundredths. So this is what we have is 42, and we're taking away 19 of these hundredths. So to see if you can read through these and see which one will best represent what we need to do. We need to take them away. I can see it says we're going to mark the ones we're taking away with an X. So see which one matches up. Okay, so here is their model. So they shaded across 42 squares, and then they X'd out 19 of them. So the ones that are left over without an X in them and are shaded in is what we have left. So I can see here 10, 20, there's one up here, 21, 22, 23. So there are 23 shaded squares, which makes my answer 0.23. So you can put that 0 there. I usually don't. Sometimes it just makes it easier to notice that there's a decimal there. So either way, 23 hundredths is what was left over. So let's go ahead and try this problem about this bluebird. So a cardinal weighs 1.5 ounces. So the cardinal is 1.5. And I can see up here a bluebird is 1.09, so 1 in 9 hundredths. Find the difference. So that means I need to subtract. The difference is the answer to a subtraction problem in ounces between the weights of a cardinal and a bluebird. The weight of the bluebird is shown. So one thing I'm going to want to do is I want to figure out which one is more, and that's what I want to start my problem with. So I have 1.5 and I have 1.09. So I need to think about which one is bigger and needs to go on top. I'm going to add in this placeholder 0 here. So ones are the same, but 5 is bigger than 0. So this one is the problem. 1.5 is my first number I have, and we're subtracting 109. So if I do that here, 1.5 minus 1.09, I still have 0 here. So it's very helpful to keep the same number of decimal places. So I like to put that placeholder 0 here to remind me that I have 0. I can't just bring this 9 straight down. That's not going to work. So 0 minus 9, I can't do. So I come borrow and regroup. 10 minus 9 is 1. 4 minus 0 is 0. 1, I'm sorry, not 0. Just getting carried away. And 1 minus 1 is 0. There's my 0. So my answer, the difference between the two birds is 41 hundredths of a pound. So less than half of a pound difference. Let's go ahead and put what situation we would use to, what expression we would use to subtract. This fly is making me crazy. Then we're going to write 1.5 in here, 1 and 5 tenths. But since it was 1 and 9 hundredths, we want to have them make this. We want to make them have the same number of places. So now we're going to rewrite our problem, lining up the ones, the decimals, the tenths, and the hundredths. And then you're going to subtract and tell me the total. And then tell me if you had a subtraction, you're going to subtract a decimal from a whole number. For example, if you had 4 minus 2 and 45 hundredths, how would you set that problem up and what would you need to do to be able to subtract it? So see if you can think about a problem like that and explain to me what you would do. Hey, when you are done with this, go back and click I'm done. And then you'll work on your check for understanding and your practice and homework. If you need any help, please let me know.